chapter 3, the book of Ruth, the 3rd chapter. And we are in our Bible character study number 10. And this is Ruth, the second half of Ruth. We were kind of divided our efforts with the annual meeting last week. But here we are tonight looking at Ruth. And we've seen that Naomi was in Moab, and her husband died, and then her 2 sons died. Her 2 daughters-in-law wept with her, and she was going back to Bethlehem, her hometown in Judea. And they said, "We'll go with you." And Naomi said, "No, go back to your own homes, your own parents' place." And Orpah, the one daughter-in-law, said, "Okay, I'll go." And she did. But Ruth said, "I am not going to leave you. Don't ask me to leave you, because I'm not going to. And your God is my God. Your people is my people. Where you die, I'm going to die. And your God is my God." And so Ruth has decided that she is loyal to her mother-in-law, and she goes with her. And to Naomi, it's a homecoming. To Ruth, it's going to a foreign land. She's a Moabitess. She's not a Jew. So here we are on our study sheet. And question number 2, this is after the first couple of chapters of Ruth. We're in chapter 3 now. What advice does Naomi have for Ruth in chapter 3, verses 1 through 4? So she says, "Go to Boaz and present yourself as a widow and a close relative." So you're supposed to say to him, "I'm related to you by marriage. You know, my mother-in-law was married to Elimelech, and you are a relative of Elimelech." And so how did Ruth respond? Well, she did it. She took her mother-in-law's advice, and she did do what her mother-in-law had said. Question number 3, the barley harvest, indeed the whole harvest season, was a time of much hard work, but also joy and gratitude in God's provision of grain for food. Thus we find Boaz's heart was merry. The actions and responses of Boaz and Ruth seem strange to us, but they are highly significant in their own culture. In interpreting them, the first thing we should note is that there's nothing improper or inappropriate in what they did. There is no hint of any kind of sexual suggestion in any of their words or actions. Instead, they're following highly formalized customs. So, Naomi is going to say, this is what you do. You go where he's lying down on the threshing floor. You lie down at his feet, and you uncover his feet. Well, that's saying, "Would you marry me?" But there's nothing inappropriate. There's nothing weird about this. This is all formalized custom. Another thing that we need to keep in mind as we enter into the last half of the book of Ruth is the word that the New American Standard Bible translates as kinsman in chapter 2, verse 1, or one of our closest relatives in 2:20, or kinsman again in 3:2, close relative in 3:9. Those are all the same Hebrew word, and the word is goel, and it means a brother-in-law or other close family member who has the duty to marry a widow and have a child with that widow, and that first eldest son would be named for the father, the dead father. And this strikes us as very strange, but this is normal. This is how it's done. And that provides that the inheritance of that dead man continues in the family. The land, the name goes with that man, goes with that family, and his name does not die out in Israel. But there's rules that go with this, meaning, okay, if you marry a woman who is your dead brother's wife, you have to assume responsibility for caring for her children. And there are certain legal liabilities that come with that. Now, here's one more piece to this, and it's this. The word goel is also used of God in relation to Israel. So in Isaiah 43:14, it says, "Thus says the Lord, your goel, your Redeemer. I am the one who buys you back and brings you to myself. I am your kinsman redeemer. I have the right to do this, and I'm going to protect you and care for you. So when Ruth changes her clothes, goes to the threshing floor, and lies down at Boaz's feet, she is encouraging him to become her kinsman redeemer, her Goel, by marrying her. So how does Boaz respond? Down in verse 9, he's startled, and he realizes there's a woman lying at his feet in the middle of the night, and he sits up and says, "Who are you?" I guess I probably would do the same. And she says, "I am Ruth, your maid, so spread your covering over your maid, for you are a close relative." That's our word. You are a close relative. You are a Goel. You are a kinsman redeemer to me. And in verse 10, notice what he says. He doesn't say, "I'm not wasting my money on you." He doesn't say, "You have the wrong idea about this." He says, "May you be blessed of the Lord, my daughter. You have shown your last kindness to be better than the first by not going after young men, whether poor or rich. Now, my daughter, do not fear. I will do for you whatever you ask, for all my people in the city know that you are a woman of excellence." What did Boaz just say? Yes. He said yes, and he said, "Thank you for the chance to serve the Lord and show kindness and generosity." So, when somebody says, "Would you help me out?" and we say, "No, I don't have time," or we say, "I'm too busy," another possible response would be, "Well, thank you for asking. I would love the chance to serve. Thanks for giving me the chance to serve God." And that's what Boaz did. And there is a little clue, a possible clue, in verse 10, when he says, "You've shown your last kindness to be better than the first by not going after young men, whether poor or rich." There's a possible hint in there. He might be older. He might be, there's no hint anywhere that he was previously married and his wife died. It might simply be that he never married. But possibly this is a clue. Boaz is older by some years than Ruth because of that remark that he makes. So Boaz is apparently a man of some wealth and influence. In chapter 3, verse 11, he mentions all my people in the city. Literally, in Hebrew, that's all my people in the gate. Does anybody know why it would say in the gate? That's where business transactions were done. So you would, the gate is usually, kind of a big open area. It's usually made out of stone, and it's got walls to protect the village or the town or the city. But in the middle is quite often a double door made out of wood, not always, but often. And it's big enough that you could have kind of a meeting there. And when business transactions were held, suppose you're going to buy or sell a piece of property, or you have a herd of goats that you want to get rid of and you want to sell it, you would do that in the gate, and you would have other witnesses, other men of the town who are there to watch the transaction and verify, yes, he said that he would buy that for 100 gold pieces. We heard him say that. And so when Boaz says, "My people in the gate," what he's saying is, I have agents who work on my behalf, and they're in the gate of Bethlehem, and they have heard about you. They know that you and your mother-in-law came back from Moab, and your mother-in-law has taken possession of the house that she and her husband had, and I know everything I've heard about you is that you are a woman of excellence. Kind of an interesting statement, isn't it? And so that's what he hears about Ruth. What applications can we draw from Ruth's example in verse 11, chapter 3, verse 11? One very basic one would simply be, have a good testimony. Have a testimony such that you would be able at any point in a conversation to talk to your next door neighbor or the clerk at the grocery store or the nurse in the doctor's office or whomever it might be. You would be able to talk to that individual about Jesus Christ. If you were really angry and you were getting steamed up and you were saying something rude or harsh to this person, and you were really letting them have it, give them a piece of your mind, would you be able 30 seconds later to say, I'm a Christian and I'd like to talk to you about Jesus? Well, that doesn't work too good. And down through the years, various times when I have been tempted to let somebody know what I thought, I have run that through that filter in my head. Okay, if in 5 minutes I had the chance to talk to this person about the Lord, if I were to say right now what I feel like saying, would I be able to witness to them? And the answer is no. Okay, then I guess maybe I'm not going to say what I feel like saying. Ruth has a good testimony. She is able at any point to talk about God. She is upright in her dealings. She's known as a woman of loyalty to her mother-in-law. There's nothing that can stick as a charge against her in Ruth's character. And so we could draw that application from Ruth, that she had a good testimony, and a good testimony is of great value in the Christian life. Now, there's a new twist in the narrative in chapter 3, verse 12. Here's what it says. Here's Boaz, and he's talking to Ruth. It's still the middle of the night, and they're probably having a whispered conversation. And he said, "Thank you for coming to me, and not looking at young men. And I will do everything you say, and I'm going to do it today." And then he says, verse 12, this is almost like a novel, twists and turns, plot sequences. So he says, "Now it is true, I'm a close relative. However, there is a relative closer than I." Well, we didn't know about that. We've come to appreciate Boaz's gentleness and kindness, his attention to detail. We've come to appreciate Ruth's loyalty to her mother, her hard work. But now all of a sudden, wait a minute, what's going on? This isn't what's supposed to happen. And so,
well, he must have researched the possibility.
probably because for the Jews, genealogies were a big deal. You would know all your family. You would know your second and third and fourth cousins. You know all your aunts and uncles. And so he would know in the line of succession, this guy gets first dibs. He would know that. And by the way, there's nothing about the relative, even though we find out momentarily that he doesn't come through with it, there's nothing about the relative that makes us think that there's something bad about his character. There's a closer relative, and in chapter 3 and verse 13, here's what he says: "Remain this night, and when morning comes, if he will redeem you, good, let him redeem you. But if he does not wish to redeem you, then I will redeem you, as the Lord lives. Lie down until morning." So he says, stay put. If this other guy, the other guy can redeem you, then you'll be protected. He will take care of you. You're all set. But if he won't, then I will. And so he says, stay here. Number 7, when did Ruth leave the threshing floor? And the answer is early morning, before people could see. So it's before dawn. You could maybe tell that somebody's moving around, but it's dark, dark, dark. And so she gets up and leaves. And then notice what he says. He gives her a gift in verse 15. And after she had left, let's see, where did it go?
The gift is in 15.
Yeah, and I'm looking for the conversation he had with his staff. Okay. 14. There it is. Okay, I read right over it. In verse 14, "So she laid at his feet until morning and rose before one could recognize another. And he said, let it not be known that the woman came to the threshing floor." So he tells his staff, he's got his harvest staff there, some supervisors and a lot of the women who would be working in the fields for him. And he says to them, I'm telling everybody right now, the fact that Ruth was here tonight is not to be discussed in public. That is not for public information. And that's what he says. He must have had quite a bit of respect and loyalty from his staff for him to be able to say that and have it stick, because, this is kind of a big deal. Can you imagine the whispers? Did you see that? There was a woman here tonight. I think it might be Ruth, the Moabitess. Don't you think he'd be a good match for Boss? Boss and Ruth, that'd be awesome. And the talk, how the talk would go. And for them to abide by Boaz's orders seems to speak well, not only of them, the employees, but of the boss. Why? Why does it speak well of Boaz? They respect him. He's a man of honesty. He's a man of integrity. He takes good care of them. He looks out for their interest. He is concerned about his employees. And they respond by saying, well, if the boss doesn't want us to say anything, then we're not going to say anything. So, the more we find out about Boaz, the more we like him. Some people, you find out a few things, say, wow, that's a quality guy. And then you find out a little bit more, and you say, well, maybe not. But the more that we learn about Boaz, the more that we learn about Ruth, we say, these people are for real. These are very godly people. They love God, and they treat people right. So, what gift, I'm in question 8, what gift did Boaz give Ruth when she left? 6 measures of barley. That's a lot. Anybody look up how much it was? I think it's like 3/5 of a bushel. So it's a considerable amount of grain that he is sending with her. That's going to bake a lot of bread. Yeah, right. Did she get tired hauling that home? Well, maybe. So what does Naomi say about Boaz's character and actions in 3:18? So Naomi knows Boaz. She has known him through her husband for years. And she says, if he said he's going to settle it today, you can count on it. So you're in suspense, but you don't have to be in suspense too long, because if he told you, today I'm going to fix this, then you can be assured today he's going to fix it. Chapter 4 of Ruth gives us a dramatic scene at the city gate. How many men did Boaz ask to serve as a council of witnesses and judges? 10. That'd be 10 there. Did the other relative want to buy Elimelech's land? Yes, he did. He said, yeah, that's a good piece of property. I know that field. That's a good one. So what did Boaz tell the relative that he had to do in order to buy the land? You have to marry Ruth. You acquire her, she will be your wife. And so now does he want to redeem the land? No, I can't do that. That would jeopardize my inheritance. Now, I haven't studied out what that means. And I don't think it's just an excuse. I think that there's some legality in the Jewish law that would be for real. I can't afford to do that. That would place me in jeopardy. So he's backing out of it. And question 10, the actions in chapter 4, 7 through 9 seem very strange to us, but were the normal custom of the culture. So here's what happened in verse 7 of chapter 4 of Ruth. Now this was the custom in former times in Israel concerning the redemption and the exchange of land to confirm any manner. A man removed his sandal and gave it to another, and this was the manner of attestation in Israel. So the closest relative said to Boaz, buy it for yourself. And he removed his sandal. Then Boaz said to the elders and all the people, you are witnesses today that I have bought from the hand of Naomi all that belonged to Elimelech, and all that belonged to Chilion and Mahlon. Moreover, I have acquired Ruth the Moabitess, the widow of Mahlon, to be my wife, in order to raise up the name of the deceased on his inheritance, so that the name of the deceased will not be cut off from his brothers or from the court of his birthplace. You are witnesses today. Now, to us that sounds really bizarre. You take your shoe off. You take your shoe off and you hold it up and say, no, I remove myself from these proceedings. I am not going to buy that property. And taking off his sandal is testimony to that fact. So what did the men around Boaz and the other men say? We are witnesses. So that's the formal response. So Boaz is saying, you 10 guys, you're seeing this, right? You see this? He took a shoe off, and we're exchanging these words. He has backed away from buying that property, and I am saying, I am buying Elimelech's property, and I am acquiring Ruth the Moabitess. And all the men say, we are witnesses. We see this happening. And then they pronounce a blessing on him. And in verse 11, may the Lord make the woman who is coming into your home like Rachel and Leah, both of whom built the house of Israel. So they're saying, we are asking that God would richly bless you and your new wife. We want this to be a great marriage. We want you to have lots of kids, and may God's blessing be upon you. In verse 12, an additional blessing from the elders in the gate is make your house like the house of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah. That's a little weird because that's one of the more seedy scenes in the past. But what they're saying is you're bringing a foreigner into your home, but God bless that. God bless the relationship with a foreigner, and we're asking God's blessing on this as well. And so, question number 12, what blessing did God give to Boaz and Ruth in 4:13? They have a baby boy. They got a baby boy. And what did the women of Bethlehem say about Naomi and Ruth and Boaz in 4:14 and 15?
Bless you, Lord.
Yeah.
Restore life and nourish your old age.
Yeah. And not only do you have a daughter-in-law and who loves you and is better than 7 sons, but you now have a grandson. And so the women around Naomi are saying, Naomi, can you see the hand of God? Can you see the blessing of God? Remember what Naomi was like when she got back to Bethlehem at first? What did she say? Don't call me Naomi anymore. Naomi means pleasant. Call me Mara, because I went out full and God has afflicted me and I've come back and I'm empty. I got nothing. And that characterizes her attitude. But now, notice her attitude has changed dramatically. Verse 16, then Naomi took the child and laid him in her lap and became his nurse. So she gets to be a grandma to this baby boy. What did the neighbor woman call the baby? Obed. And there's one final dramatic piece of information that the author of this book, we don't know who wrote the book, one possibly is Samuel, and one last piece of information is in verse 22, to Obed was born Jesse, and to Jesse, David. And therefore, from a New Testament perspective, looking at this from the church age, we say about this story of the kinsman redeemer was not just about Boaz. It was about Boaz's great, 15 times more great grandson, Jesus, the ultimate kinsman redeemer, the one who bought us back, not just from Moab, not just from poverty and famine. He bought us back from death. He bought us back from sin and hell. And so Ruth is a story of redemption. It's a story of coming back from bitterness and anger, from deprivation and hardship. And it's probably at least as much about Naomi as it is about Boaz and Ruth. Questions or comments? Yes, ma'am.
I've heard another scholar say that perhaps the other relative was not named because oh no, I'm not gonna marry that foreigner.
Yeah.
So the author of the book decided not to name him as a,
Yeah.
like, he doesn't get that honor.
Right, yes. Yeah, so you see, you can see the flip side of that in places where humility is called for. So for example, at Carolyn's place, we just did a study on John the Apostle. The disciple whom Jesus loved, or the other disciple, and that's John being humble and leaving himself unnamed. But of course we know who it is. And the same thing could be true here, that the narrator is purposely not naming this guy, either because he doesn't get the honor of being mentioned, or to avoid embarrassing him. Yep. Other comments, questions? Take your prayer bulletins, please.